Namaste. Welcome to the third edition of the Global Festival of Oneness organized by Advaita Academy. We will start with a prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru-Paramparam. Welcome to the weekend special session of Prashnottara Ratnamalike explained to us by Neema Majmudar. Before we start the session, I'd like to introduce the speaker. Neema ji is a student of Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and she has been teaching Vedanta and personal development and philosophy for several years now, since 1999. Along with her husband Surya Tahora, they have created a bilingual website in French and English, which explains in modern style the visions of traditional teaching of Advaita Vedanta with numerous links to articles and videos of their talks. They have also co-authored a book, Living the Vision of Oneness, which expounds the ways in which the vision of the Bhagavad Gita and Veda can be utilized in daily life. Today's session, viewers, is a recorded session, so there will be no Q&A. So let us now listen to the recording of Prashnottara Ratnamalike by Neema Majmudar.
Last time we saw, the last one we saw is who is the one, who is the courageous one, who is braver than Rama. And the person who is braver than Rama is the one who is not, swayed by the arrows of Cupid. And what it means is that attraction plays a very big role in our life, and that takes us away from what we are supposed to do. And if anybody can contain that and continue to do what needs to be done, that person is braver than Rama. Okay. Now, next one, which is verse number 33. I'm not going to, there are total 67 verses, and we are still on 33. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a few ones, and I'm going to talk about the most important ones, and I may not be doing each and every one. Okay. So the number 33, Kim Aharnisham Anuchintyam. Okay. What is to be contemplated day and night? So the answer is Bhagvat Charanam Na Samsaraha. What needs to be contemplated upon day and night is the feet of the Lord and not the worldly life. Okay. Now, what does it mean? So, the life has to be lived. You cannot not live life. But what is important to understand is, life is lived within forms. And beneath the form, there is a presence of Ishvara. So what happens is, if we only see the forms and if we miss the presence of Ishvara, then what happens is our understanding of life itself becomes very incomplete, very scattered, and we can't actually make sense of life. So this is why when you begin to see beneath the forms the presence of Ishvara, then what happens is every form begins to make sense, and it gets its own place in the in the grand scheme of things. So you don't need to stay away from anything, but what you need to do is bring the presence of Ishvara and see that object within the context of Ishvara's order and not an isolated object. Okay? So this is why, how to make it real for us, Swamiji used to use 3 expressions, which are lovely expressions. The first is settle account with Ishvara. And what does that mean? What it means is, when you live in the world, and if you don't have Ishvara in your life, if you don't see the presence of Ishvara, then what happens is, very many times you can't make sense of events. What seems to us is, why some good people are suffering and why some not such good people, according to us, right? How they are getting away with things. So that leaves us with a little, or yourself, right? You feel that I have done such amazingly good things, but I'm suffering. and others who you think are not as evolved as you, but they seem to have a better time than you, then these are the questions that arise in our mind. And if we bring Ishvara in our life, then this is what we call settling account with Ishvara. So what it means is these kind of thoughts have to be replaced with the understanding. And what is the understanding? That whatever happens here, it is governed by cause and effect relationship. So there is never going to be a possibility that what Ishvara overlooked something, right? If it's a human being, there is a chance that the person forgets or overlooks or gives more importance to some variables and doesn't give enough importance, as partiality. All these are possible if there is a person who is governing the universe. But if the laws of Ishvara are governing the universe, then everything is infallible. So this is why the minute you begin to understand that everything is a part of this infallible order doesn't make a mistake, it doesn't kind of show any partiality, then you settle account with Ishvara. And what does it mean? You live in this world with trust and not with cynicism, not with, you're not skeptical human being. And that's when you begin to blossom as a human being. And world ceases to be a place of misery for you, right? Because it becomes Ishvara's glory. So this is what, that's why you need to keep Ishvara in your mind at all times. There is something that the second expression that Swamiji used to use, and that is also very beautiful, and that is relax in the lap of Ishvara. And this is a little emotional thing, that how a child relaxes completely in the lap of mother, right? There is a trust that you will be taken care of. You know that the mother will always do the best possible thing for you, very naturally. And similarly, what we do need to do is, while we live in this world, we need to mentally relax in the lap of Ishvara, because Ishvara is the infallible. Ishvara is, that which gives you, creates a platform which is in form of the universe and gives you possibilities, right? Possibilities of, so many different kinds of possibilities. So this is why you come with your body and you come with your mind and you come with your inclinations, and you can decide whether you want to go along with your inclinations, you want to change your path. All these possibilities are given, and your will is given to what take you wherever you want to go. And this is why you need to relax in this order. The world is not out to punish you. It is not out to get you. It only provides opportunities. And you need to decide where you want to go. And you have to take appropriate actions. And what will the order do? Will give you corresponding results. And this is how, relaxation is not staying away from actions. Relaxation is a result of your understanding of the nature of the world as being pervaded by Ishvara. And the third thing is, Swamiji used to say, less of Jiva and more of Ishvara in your life. So what does it mean? When a situation comes in front of you, there is one person, each one of us, and what our impulsive thinking about that situation. You want to protect yourself, you feel you're scared, you feel that, others are out to get you, others are there, they may harm you. So there is always this guarded individual who's always little scared or is not doubtful, and that is what he used to say, there is more of Jiva in your life. When there comes more of Ishvara in your life, what happens is you begin to see the situation as it is. And as you begin to see the situation as it is, you also begin to see your role in the situation as it is, without your own raga dvesha, without your own pressures, and what then is expected of you in that situation. And if you do what needs to be done, rather than just go with what is comfortable for you or what is pleasing for you, then what happens is there is less of you and more of Ishvara. in your life. So this is what we call when you satatam, when you constantly bring this all-pervading presence within which all the possibilities exist, all the transactions take place. Then what happens is your mind is interacting with the universe with proper perspective, and it doesn't go on a tangent with its own beliefs and own orientation. So this is why that is ahar-nisham anuchintyam. And what does it mean? Constantly, right? So it's not like one time you hear in the class, all that is here is Ishvara, that is enough. Or every once in a day, what all the time you need to keep in mind this reality. And also anuchintanam. And what is anuchintanam? One time, and then second time it has to be reinforced. Even if your mind kind of takes you away into its own familiar patterns, you have to bring it back. And you have to begin to see the world as what there is a beautiful Upanishad, right? Ishavasya Upanishad. And what is the opening line of that Upanishad? Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Right? So that means that is a fact. And what we need to do is to bring this fact, right, in different situations and operate from there, and not from this ninja attitude where you're constantly trying to protect yourself against the onslaught of everything that happens to you. So this is what is to be done. Now, the next one. Chakshu mantaha api andaha kesyuhu. So even if they have eyes, still they are blind. Who are these people? Ye nastikaha manujaha. Those nastika generally is translated as people who do not believe in Ishvara. But it's a little technical word, and it says Nastika, according to our Shastra, it means that those who don't accept Veda as a pramana. So that is the technical definition of what Nastika is. So what it can be seen in both ways, right? So suppose you conclude, right, that I only see forms, and I don't see anybody who has created all the forms. Therefore, I don't believe in Ishvara. It's an simple statement, right? Because then what is happening is you expect what Ishvara to be a person, but little different looking than us. And that person then would then create the whole universe. So that means you have a wrong expectation. And if nobody fulfills that expectation, it's good, because that's a wrong expectation in the first place. Then instead of changing your understanding of Ishvara, what you do is you conclude, therefore, there is no Ishvara. They are what we call blind people, because they stay with their thoughts, they stay with their beliefs. They don't look a little bit deeply and find answers to those apparent contradictions that they have and try to resolve it. So they don't have that curiosity, so they are blind, right? And the other thing is, suppose you believe that there is Ishvara, but for you, right, Ishvara becomes, and then you conclude that, oh, nobody that I see locally, I can claim that person can claim that person is Ishvara. So Ishvara then must be in heaven, somewhere away from us, somewhere remote, at a remote location. So that also, those people, they don't take what is the vision of Vedas. Veda is, Swamiji used to say, we don't say that there are many gods. We don't say that there is one God. We say that there is only God. There is nothing else other than God. So what all that is here is Ishvara. And if your buddhi rejects this possibility, your buddhi doesn't want to even look into this possibility, then what happens? You are as well, even though you have eyes, right? The eyes are meant for you to see. And you suppose you don't see, then you are a blind person. You waste away this opportunity. This figuring out the nature of Ishvara as intelligence, Sarvajnaha Sarvashaktiman, which pervades everything, itself is formless, but what gives rise to all the forms, that buddhi can arrive at. And if you don't want to use buddhi for it, you're as though blind. Okay. So now, the next, Kim Tirtham Api Chamukhyam. Okay. what is the foremost place of pilgrimage? Where can you go and you will purify yourself the most? Okay? Generally, people go to the pilgrimage for purifying themselves. Chitta malam yat nivartayati, right? So that which removes the impurity of mind is the biggest pilgrimage. So generally we have an idea that a pilgrimage is what you have to go to some place like in Himalayas, in Badri Kedar or Mount Kailash. So you have to go far, you have to go through hardships, and physical difficulties, and they are all in the height and it's very cold, and the accommodations are not very good. So that we think is a pilgrimage which will earn us a lot of punya, and which it does. It's not that it doesn't, right? But the real pilgrimage is, even if you are sitting at home, and what if you chitta balam nirvayati, yeah. What does that mean? All the distortions that exist in our mind, if you can undo them, then that is the biggest pilgrimage. So what are these impurities of the mind? So one thing, lack of shraddha. Lack of shraddha means you think, right, even though we don't know so much, and we don't know, and we are struggling in life, but you keep telling yourself, whatever my intellect comes to know, only that is the truth. Everything else is, it's not something that I would even consider. I would not even look into. So that is what we call lack of shraddha. Lack of shraddha means you're not listening. Even if you are struggling, even if you don't know enough, still it seems to you that you're in charge, you're in control, and everything you know, and everything anything anybody else says, which is contradictory to what you think, then that is to be dismissed. So that is lack of shraddha, right? Then what if there is the second impurity of mind is confusion between dharma and dharma, and this is a big confusion. So many people are prone to it. Some of them, they know that this is not the right thing to do, and still they are pushed by their raga dvesha, their likes and dislikes, their preferences, their own pressures to do things which are inappropriate, and they are one type of people. Then some people, even if they know what is the right thing to do, they are unable to do it, right? So this kind of a people, in spite of knowing what is the right thing to do, they are unable to follow that, and this is the impurity. So what you're like, exactly, so either you yourself are confused about what is to be done, or even if you're clear about what is to be done, there is a pressure which takes you in the other direction and you are not able to contain it. So that is impurity. So the person who is able to interpret dharma correctly and to follow it, that person has removed those impurities. Then the person who has greediness is also the impurity, that you're wanting to hoard everything. Wanting to hoard is what we call a person who is insecure about life, cannot, who wants the maximum, and doesn't matter whether others have enough or not. But I want to ensure that I have enough, not only for myself, but for my kids and my grandkids. And there is never an end to that hoarding. And that person's mind is impure, because that person never does anything good for the humanity. And that person's presence on this earth is a draining presence, because that person just takes and doesn't give back anything. So that is impurity. So anything which allows you, where you give up these tendencies, that's your pilgrimage, right? And daya. Daya is, as I told you, empathy is a human program. What that others are uncomfortable, and there is, just as naturally as you try to help yourself to make your life comfortable, you can also reach out to others. So that's natural. But what happens is we abort that natural program, and we justify and we don't reach out to others. So that becomes an impurity. So these are all the impurities, and any initiative that is taken by you to overcome this impurities is equivalent to what? Going on a pilgrimage. So that is what is highlighted here. Okay, now the next one. Kahahi na vachya sudhiya. For what should not be spoken by the people who have what good mind. Sudhiya means good mind, who are people of good conduct. So what should not be done? What should not be spoken by them? So two things, very interesting. Paradoshaha andrutancha tatvat. Okay, the one thing that we have to abstain from is to find faults with others, right? And the second is that what we distort facts. Andrutam means we do not tell, even if there are two kinds, as I said, we ourselves twist everything and understand it wrongly, or the thing is that we think we are right, but what actually we don't have a proper opinion. So these are the people who are these two traits good people try to avoid. What is this paradosha? So there is this very famous example, and that example is, suppose there is a glass, and one person can say that it is half full, and the other person is looking at it and says it is half empty. So now, what is the fact? The fact is both, right? So it's of course it's half full means it is half full and half empty. But where your where you pay attention, that's what becomes reality for you. So that means every human being that you meet, right? And there is, without any exception, will definitely have some good qualities and will have, some limitations, some vulnerabilities. It's unavoidable, right? It's impossible that everybody is behaving perfectly at all times, 100%. There is no such human being. So then what happens is, either you can keep finding faults, that what this person did this, look what that person didn't say the right thing, or that person was not warm enough, or was not loving enough, or that person was not paying attention to me. So there is always something wrong, that the mind goes and it finds something wrong. And then there is a mind which goes and finds something which is beautiful or which is inspiring. So wherever you put your mind, right, mind is like a muscle. Wherever you put, it will get very good at doing it. So what if you keep finding fault? You just basically be a person who's never satisfied and who's always putting a lot of pressure on others and also a lot of pressure on oneself, because what you do to others, what we often do the same to ourselves. So what a person who's clever will refrain from finding faults with others. Yeah, we have to. That doesn't mean that you become totally oblivious to shortcomings of others. But even if you recognize the shortcoming of others, instead of labeling them, you can think, okay, this is a shortcoming. How can I lift that person up? What can I do to help that person to evolve just a little bit more, and help that person out of this, whatever habits or whatever, rather than condemning that person and judging and labeling that person. So this is why this is a mind. So I'm going to tell you a story that, it's interesting. For small things that we do, our orientations come out. We don't even realize that, right? So I used to, before COVID, I used to do physical classes. And, sometimes after the class, people would want to talk to me and all. So I can't just leave the class after I have finished teaching. So I would, stay there, and then I would just reach right on time, or just few minutes here and there. But some days, people were in a hurry and they had to leave. So I reached 5 minutes earlier or 10 minutes earlier. And sometimes traffic was less, so I reached earlier. And I remember very well, there were two kinds of people. The one set of people would say, oh, we are so happy that, you came a little early so we can sit and chat with you for a while, and not just on time so that the class starts immediately. So that was their way of expressing that they were so happy to see me, and what we call a positive orientation. There were some other people that instinctively, what they would tell me is that, oh, why today there was no class? Has that class stopped? So there was always that thing about, is there something wrong with this, instead of being happy of my coming a little earlier, their mind first goes to, oh, maybe this class has stopped. Oh, maybe, there was no class today. So this is how it was cancelled. So it only goes to the negative things, and you don't want a mind like that. Okay, then Anrutam Tattvat. So what, there is this amazing verse in Mundaka Upanishad, and in the chapter 1, section 2. And it is interesting because the first few verses of chapter 1, section 2, they start by praising all the rituals, how important they are, because they put you in touch with Ishvara, they may help you evolve. And from 7 onwards, it begins to what? Those very people who are performing rituals, and they start thinking that what these rituals are the end in themselves. And what they give you is like in form of different places, different realms, different heavens. That is the ultimate goal of life. So what happens is ritual, which is praised by Shruti itself, by saying how important it is for you to connect to the universe and to show your gratitude, show your responsibility. That very thing, if it starts becoming rigid and you start thinking that what this is an end and going to lokas is the only goal that Vedas are talking about, and not only you start believing in that, but what you start influencing others, then they are called deluded people. Deluded people because they have Amrita. Amrita means they themselves are misguided about role of what rituals and prayers in your life, and then they confuse others. So what we need to do is get our own things right, because even if we want to do others good, we may end up harming them if what we believe in is not right. So that is what we have to refrain from, Amrita, and make sure that the ideas that we have or ideas that we communicate are sound ideas and not just some misguided thinking on our part. Then the next one. Kaha sarva guna vinashi. So what is the destroyer of all qualities? So that what there is one thing which destroys all our qualities, and that is lobha, greed. Why is greed? So one thing that Swamiji used to teach us, that we must have alam vritti. What is alam vritti? That you enough. Enough means certain contentment, certain feeling that what I'm safe, I am taken care of. I have, I have been showered with a lot of things that I need. And it's not that you're always a grabber and you want more and more and more, and you're always dissatisfied with what you have. So this kind of a lobha, when you if you start with a dissatisfaction, and that what no matter what you get, right, you will never be satisfied. You may think that up to a point, after that I will be satisfied, but when you reach that point, then what your mind tells you, no, this is not enough, then there is something more, and that keeps you under the chains. And as this is what they call rat race. So who's a rat racer? Who's never satisfied today, right? So why? Because you always, something else needs to be achieved, and you keep pushing yourself, and you're so stressed out that what, even if you become a CEO, you have MD in mind, and you can never relax, and you can never enjoy all the accomplishments that you have. This is what we call greed. Money, I want more. Relationships, means I want to squeeze as much I can out of all the relationships. You are needy. You want attention. You want people to love you, and you're always demanding, right? So that kind of a person is, there is never this alam buddhi. There is always greed for more. Greed for more means you are, if then you become what, a person who's always a consumer, because your needs are never satisfied. So you want to get more and more. You want to get more and more, and you never become a contributor in life. And this is what here, that is, this lobha will become what? Destroyer of all the good qualities that you have. And that's why you have to find a certain contentment. And this is why these Vedic rituals are important. Why? Because the need of a human being to always get this and get that is contained a little bit by these rituals. What do they do? Instead of complaining about what you don't have, you begin to show gratitude for what you are given. And that is a lovely mind. It's a lovely mind which is going to find some satisfaction, right? So you're not always searching and always complaining and always feeling that you haven't, you have to get somewhere else where you don't enjoy what is given to you. So that contentment is important. Greed, what will do is it will take you off, right? Now, next. Pranat api kaha ramyaha. What is dearer even than life? Kula dharmaha sadhu sangascha. Right? So two things are considered to be very good. And one is kula dharma. Kula dharma means, suppose you come from a tradition, right? You come from a home which has good sanskaras. So if you come from a home where people are taken to truth, where people are, given to charities, people are prayerful, and suppose one person comes and that person says that now I don't see meaning behind all of this, and what they will destroy that Kula Dharma, certain tradition which is coming out, certain samskaras which are running through generations. So that we all have to learn to continue. So if what is even dearer than life is to keep those wonderful traditions going. You are a trustee, right? You have come to this home, and because of some punya that you've taken birth here, and got those traditions are given to you, and you have to continue. Now you can use the same idea with reference to the whole nation and culture. What does it mean? So Swamiji used to always say that we are all lucky. We are born in this country where Vedic tradition has been going on for generations, and it becomes our responsibility to recognize its richness, recognize its value, and then imbibe it in our life and share it with others. If you don't do that, then what happens is our duty as nationals of this country, where we are born into this Vedic tradition, there is the religion of that duty. So if you can uphold it quietly, without trying to impose on others, without trying to look down on others, if we can find a certain pride in this cultural heritage, and we in our own quiet way make some contribution, and keep it going, then that is something which is even dearer than your life. What a beautiful thing. Now, sadhu sangascha, right? The second thing that we actively have to seek is a company of virtuous people, because all of us, right? We human beings, we need role models. We need to, suppose somebody tells you that you have to be like this and you have to be like this. It may seem to you that, it's all impossible, it's wonderful you have to be like this, but nobody can be like this. But if you find somebody who is able to live like that and is actually among you, then that person becomes source of inspiration for everybody. So this is why these wise people, right, they can actually influence us, and they can take us, they can totally change the trajectory of your life. And they make a huge contribution to your life, and they bring about big transformation. And this is what I found, that, just an economist and working with the UN and all, and from there, meeting with one person, Swami Dayanandji, right, my guru, and where it took my life. And took my life in a very organic manner, not forced manner. But, externally, I'm not even a sannyasi or anything, but my thinking has undergone a major revolution. And that is, I can see the contribution that my teacher had on my life, and how I think, how I feel, how I behave, and what I see in this world. So that is, that is what dearer than life is, to hold on to that wise person who can make you see the world totally differently and live in it much more meaningfully. That has to be sought. Ka kalpalata loke. What is the kalpa creeper that fulfills your desire? Okay, this is interesting. The answer is Sat Shishyaya Arpita Vidya. So what now? A teacher, look at this contribution of teacher. A teacher who gives knowledge and hands over this knowledge to a good disciple, a deserving disciple, it never dies. It is like Kalpalata, which is a creeper which keeps growing, right? So this is where the wise people, they have to impart the knowledge. But as they impart the knowledge, what they have to find, the deserving discipline. People who will not distort that knowledge. People who will not take advantage of that knowledge. People don't have their own agenda, but people are truly interested in understanding it and passing it on. And if you can do that, then what happens is, you really multiply the benefits of your teaching. Because suppose you gave it to 5 people, and those 5 people were deserving, and they were able to absorb, this teaching, and those 5 people teach to yet another 5, right, or whatever, another 10. What happens is, it has a multiplier effect. And so a teaching given to the right person at the right time, with the right intention, that is like a kalpa creeper, which fulfills all your desires. So what if you want to, do good for the world? You can't go and change every individual, right? It's impossible. But what you do is, you take a few individuals who are deserving and who are capable, and you teach them, and you start a snowball effect. So that is something that we all have to be intelligent about. So this is where also, this strategic thinking is very important. So we have seen that, how we go to Europe every year, and also I have lived in the US for many years, and how much, people really respect Buddhism, and they know so much about it, and big Hollywood stars, and many intellectuals, they are very, very attracted by Buddhism. So that is very strategic decision on part of this Dalai Lama, where what he did is change the very profile of this knowledge. He went to top universities, and he started a Buddhist chair, where there was research done, where there were scholarly, papers written on Buddhism, where they engaged, the scholars, the Buddhist scholars engaged with scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists, and they produced really good quality literature. And they began to show how this aspect of life is so important for human fulfillment, through even undertaking some experiments. And what that does is, that you preserve this culture heals. It increased the status of this whole Buddhism into not just some monks, sitting somewhere and doing, meditation, and they are not connected to the world. So many people were influenced by that. Mindfulness, these are all offshoots of, this Buddhist thoughts that consciously they were brought to that stage, and that becomes our responsibility also, right? So what does it mean? That if you give the knowledge to the right people strategically, then you are making such a huge contribution. And I think that in our own way, I have seen that, Indica Moksha, it started out as Advaita Academy. They have seen that how over the years they have the organ got so many teachers together and got so many students, and what propagating these ideas and what bringing those ideas in the mainstream, which is a huge contribution. And that is something which needs to be done by us, because that is like kalpa creeper, which will what it is, it fulfills your desire, and what the benefits of your actions reach out many, many more. These are strategic interventions. So good. Now, next. Kim Shastram Sarvesham. What is weapon for all? And that is Yukti. What Yukti means reason. So what is this weapon that we have? So, unfortunately, in some of the intellectual, some of the spiritual circles, you are told that your cognitive mind, right, has a limitation. Your rational mind has a limitation. And in spirituality, you have to transcend the mind and you have to go to another realm. And that's where you will. So you have to give up this, rational thinking, doubting, questioning mind, because it will not take you anywhere. And this is so contrary to what our whole approach is. Adi Shankaracharya's commentaries have an amazing, method. And what is that method? Purva Paksha and Siddhanta. And what is this Purva Paksha? He himself would raise questions. He himself would, give a counter position. And then when he gives that counter position, he's so clever that you feel, yeah, that's true, but what's wrong with that? Then he would give what Siddhanta, the brilliant answer, which will negate what Purva Paksha is saying. So what does it do? Where is the place of Yukti? This is what we call Shruti Sammata Yukti. You can't put your cognitive mind aside and just kind of wait for some experience. It becomes spiritual la la land. And you don't want to do that. Just anything goes. You buy any idea, anything seems right to you. That sounds good, but it doesn't take you anywhere. So what Yukti is important, that your discerning mind. So many, Viveki. So our scriptures give these words, Viveki, the person who's able to discriminate, right? Distinguish between ideas, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and why it doesn't make sense, and why this cannot be contradicted. So that Yukti is always with us, and it becomes important to use it, not irresponsibly, but want to understand and not to get influenced and carried away with ideas which they don't hold logically. So this is why that becomes a weapon, in the sense it protects you. It protects you from just not going and following anybody indiscriminately, and then being taken advantage of, or wasting your life and wasting your efforts towards ends that are not even that important, and getting overly influenced by people and charisma. And here Swamiji always used to say, remind yourself, right, that what is spiritual pursuit about? It is not about following somebody. It's not about surrendering to anybody. It is about understanding your life and understanding and coming to the truth. You're the seeker of the truth. And that's why a seeker has a prayer. And what is his prayer? Let me not just go on following whoever and be gullible a human being and taken for a ride, asatoma sankamaya, from all the untruths, take my mind to the truth. Tamasoma jyotirgamaya, right? From all the darkness of confusion and this to jyoti, light of knowledge. And mrityorma amritam gamaya, in what from life of becoming, whether here or hereafter, to amritattva. That's what I'm looking for. And in order to figure out what will give me this, you need yukti, and that will protect you. So it has to be preserved, right? And it not to be just kind of got rid of. That is not what one needs to do. Okay. Now, kaha mrityuhu. What is death? Yat avadana rahitatvam, right? So, what there is absence of care, right? So, so if you, as I told you earlier, that if you don't care for your family values, if you don't care for your culture, if you don't care for your community, you don't care for your nation, then what will happen is it will all become extinct, right? So this is why all these great cultures and civilizations, they're no longer living civilizations. They all have become extinct. So you go to museums, you go and see the pyramids, you go to the Roman ruins, you go and see, all these Greek, philosophers and what they had created, the architects and all. But none of that exists in the present society. Luckily, we are born in a life culture, and a culture which has survived thousands and thousands of years. You still see people praying to the Lord Sun, right? Praying to the trees, right? Or river is not just river; it becomes Ganga, right? They put tilak on their own head to remind themselves that they are also manifestation of that divinity. So what we have to preserve this. We have to, it gives us alternative, right? Otherwise the rest of the world thinks that, oh, I have to get this. This is the definition of success. I have to have one car, and not one car. One car everybody has these days. So what I have to make it, in order to make it, I have to have a fancy car, and then I have to have fancy home, and that's all is success. And everybody else who doesn't get it hasn't made it. So that if this alone is the way that majority of humanity thinks, then what happens is, where is any alternative to look and make sense of life? So what does Vedic vision gives you an alternative? And what is this alternative? It says human being has come on this earth not to accumulate, because anything that you accumulate, anyway you have to leave behind. You can't take anything with you. And this 100 years is nothing in countless flow of time. So it's pointless. But you have come here to evolve. And what does it mean? As a human, you have two goals: self-growth and self-knowledge. Now, if the whole life becomes, let me live and go through the experiences to become more and more mature, and ultimately, right, understand that, life and its experiences in themselves, what they will not give me, what I'm searching for, what I'm really searching for through them is myself. And then what the attention turns, right, to yourself, and you begin to inquire, who are you? Who am I? Right? And that is what is the purpose of life. And if you do not do anything to preserve this culture and this tradition, then what happens is, it's not only loss for India, it is loss for humanity. And this is why we all have to do our bit without, stepping on anybody else, or, having, the negative feeling towards anybody else. That confidence in what we have inherited, and value for what we have inherited, and not being ashamed or apologetic about sharing it, because everybody is looking for it, right? Every human being is searching for certain depth in their life, in this culture, in this tradition, and its thoughts are able to provide it. So why not, right? So, okay. Kim abhayam iha, right? What leads to fearlessness here? There is what is the answer? Vairagya. And what is Vairagyam? Vairagyam, unfortunately, is used in the sense that, you have to stay away from things. You have to be detached. But, one thing we all have to understand, neither you can physically detach from anywhere. Why? Because you're connected. And the whole connection, this is what in chapter 3 of the Gita, right? Lord Krishna talks about yajna. And what is this yajna? He calls this is a cosmic yajna that is going on. And please, swakarmana tamabhyacha siddhim vindati manavaha. By offering to this ongoing yajna of Ishvara through your swakarma, you will gain the highest, right? So that means he's actually talking about interconnectedness and interdependence, and how within that interconnectedness, our responsibility. So that is physical disconnection with the world may not be very much possible. Even sannyasis, right? They have minimized those roles, but they played a very critical role. And what is that critical role? They brought this knowledge. They dedicated their whole life to imparting this knowledge, and that has tremendous benefits. They are connected, but they are connected not into this family or whatever, but they are connected to the society in a way that they lift the whole level of the society to a higher level. So that means that connection is Ishvara's connection. Nobody can be outside that connection, because all that is here is Ishvara. How can you be outside Ishvara? So it's not possible. So this is why what detachment as such, even emotionally, right? Emotionally, you don't want to become a kind of anesthetized. So where you feel no emotion or whatever. Emotions are also gift of Ishvara. But what we do need to do is cultivate emotions which are noble emotions, right? And what are they? Caring, loving, compassion. These are the things which need to be actively, cultivated. That we are not talking about, detachment here, but fearlessness comes from your non-dependency on things. And that is amazing. So what does it mean? So the minute you become dependent on any given thing, and you start thinking that thing, whether it is an object, or is it a person, or it is a situation, that will give me the lasting satisfaction that I'm seeking for, already you have introduced a distortion. You have introduced a distortion, because no object, no person, or no situation can give you final, complete fulfillment that you are searching for. That is the truth, right? It is not an advice whether you should stay or stay with things or stay away from things. This is the reality. The whole Vedanta is reality. Reality means this is the truth. This is how it is, right? And therefore, the minute you avoid, right, that over dependence by seeing what an object can do for you and what an object cannot do for you, then what you have inner freedom. Inner freedom means you don't need to be physically away from that object, but you do not depend upon that object, and therefore it will give you fearlessness. And that fearlessness is very important, right? Nothing in this world is totally indispensable, and that I can't survive without. So that you have to tell yourself. Then you can enjoy its presence, but it's not that when it is gone, you're destroyed, right? So that dependency goes away. So I read an article, and it was interesting. It was talking about, this whole value of money, and people think that it is all linear and progressive. So more money you have, happier you are. And what it was showing is, initially, it is true that, the more money you have, then you don't have to struggle for life. You can afford things easily, education, healthcare, a good home. So that's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But after a point, it reaches a plateau. So then it can't go on increasing your happiness. And there may come a point where it actually brings this negative. It actually can bring a decline. And he gave reasons of why can it bring decline. So what happens is there are 4 reasons. In order to amass so much wealth, right, or anything extraordinary, you have to put in so much effort. And what does that do? That doesn't allow you to spend time with your family, right, and to show love and care. This is one single pursuit which takes you away from all the social needs that you may have. So that's why it brings what diminishing returns. The second is that you can become suspicious as you become more and more successful. You yourself can become suspicious. Oh, why is this person trying to be so friendly with me? How is this relative is all of a sudden is so friendly with me? So that means you do not trust relationship. You keep seeing what people who are reaching out to you as wanting to take advantage from you. So you're always guarded, which reduces your happiness. The third thing is when you become status conscious, then what happens? You lose your freedom, right? So you have to wear certain clothes, you have to do your hair in a certain way, you have to buy those things, you have to be seen here. So these kind of pressures, they take away your freedom and spontaneity, and therefore they actually bring your happiness down. And then the fourth thing is fear of losing it. So even if you have it and you're enjoying it now, there is always a possibility that you will not have it. So this is why these are the things. Anything that you create a dependency, it will lead to decline in your pleasure. Up to a certain point, it will give you pleasure. So what you want to do is you want to hold on to it more and more and heighten your pleasure. And what ends up happening is that it just goes down. So fearlessness comes when you learn to live in this world without these dependencies. All the clutches have gone. That's the first time you can enjoy these objects. They're simple objects. They're all manifestation of Ishvara. But it is you who has created dependency, which leads to your suffering. Once that dependency goes, you find your freedom. You can be in midst of those things and still free. So that is that will bring fearlessness. Ka durlabha narana. What is rare for people to get? Yeah. So what is beautiful? Hari Bhakti. Hari Bhakti means devotion to Hari. Devotion to Ishvara, that unflinching devotion to Ishvara is something which is hard, right? So at different levels. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talks about, he adds an adjective to Bhakti. And what does he say? Ananya Bhakti. And what is this Ananya Bhakti? And Ananya Bhakti, he changes the very meaning of Bhakti. So what does it mean? Generally, we think that when we go to a temple or we chant, Vishnu Sahasranam, or we do some Vedic chants, or we chant bhajans, we are devotees. And the minute we walk out of the temple, then we are no longer devotees, we do normal things, right? So what the Ananya Bhakta is, what Lord Krishna says is, even when you go to work, right, and you keep Dharma in your mind, Dharma is the law of Ishvara. So that means if you keep Dharma in your mind, you're in touch with Ishvara. You do what needs to be done. You're not guided by your own pressure, and you're connected to Ishvara. When it comes to your human relationships, right, then also you keep Ishvara in your mind. And what does it mean? Neither you get totally lose your identity in order to please others, and you become a weak human being, nor you become a self-centered human being. So what does it mean? You are a giving, generous human being, but that comes not from weakness, but it comes from strength. It comes from your understanding, and it doesn't come from pressures. So these are things that we need to. Then you are a bhakta. You are a bhakta because you have proper perspective. Then when there are difficulties, then we all get very dejected, or we start blaming others, or we start labeling ourselves as failure. So all that, when you keep away and understand that there must be some causes for these effects to take place. But not only that, you can create new causes toward change at the path of your life. So that keeps you non-complaining and at the same time proactive. You're a bhakta, right? So this is something that which is called ananya bhakti. No matter what you are doing, no matter what your activities, no matter with whom you are interacting, you don't lose sight of Ishvara's order. And wherever you are, you align to this Ishvara's order. Your actions don't come from your own pressures, but from your understanding. And that is the greatest bhakta that Lord Krishna says. It is not one-dimensional bhakti, it is multiple. It is multi-dimensional. And that is hard. You find difficult to find those kind of bhaktas who have not restricted the meaning of bhakti, and they have expanded meaning of bhakti to include every area of their life. So that is hard to find. Okay. Pataka cha kim. What is a crime, right? Himsa. So what? Cruelty, hurting. So that means this ahimsa is it's a huge. We talk about ahimsa paramo dharma. What does it mean? It's the highest value. So Swamiji used to tell us that when they take sannyasa, there was one vow they take, ahimsa. Ahimsa means you are no longer a competitor in the society. You will not hurt anybody. You will not do any harm actively to anybody. So by not hurting anybody consciously, right? Not like, okay, inadvertently I did something and I ended up hurting. You become deliberate, you become sensitive, you become conscious, and you begin to reflect what impact your actions are going to have on others. So that means you are a mindful human being, and that is very, very important. And what this is, otherwise you take to cruelty, right? And what kind of cruelty? If you don't pay that attention, then what happens is you're not mindful, and you end up, by your actions, can end up harming human beings, right? Then also our ahimsa is extended to not only human beings, but what? Sensitivity towards animals, right? So you do not, they are not objects of your enjoyment or anything. They are just independent beings. They have their independent lives, and you have to respect that, right? And they are not for your entertainment, right? And also the other thing which is important to understand is that, in our eating habits and all that, least harm possible. That is showing respect for life. Yeah. And also plant kingdom. Ahimsa is extended to not only human beings and animals, but also plant kingdom. Don't unnecessarily uproot trees. Be mindful about what you do. So Swamiji used to say, even when you're walking, don't just pluck, leaves. They are just there and they have life. Unless, of course, some consumption is required, but that's a deliberate consumption, just as much as you need for your own survival, not even a little more than what is necessary. Right? Don't just harm things. Don't show indifference towards others' right to live. Yeah. So that is, if you do not respect them, if you don't follow ahimsa, then it becomes a crime. Yeah. Kasmat siddhi. So, how do you gain certain divine powers? Right? Siddhi means, certain strength of character, certain, inner strength that you get. So here, tapasaha. What is tapasaha? From penance. So, any kind, so you have tapas. We think that, you have to retire to Himalayas and sit in meditation. That we think is tapas, or stand on one leg, or stop eating. So those are extreme cases. But tapas is something which is interesting. Anything you do, anything you initiate to gain self-mastery is tapas. And what does it mean? That you can, for example, self-mastery can come from something very basic like food, right? So we just are impulsive about what we eat. Now you begin to think that, hey, I'm going to eat, and that what I eat is going to nourish my body. It is also going to provide energy, which allows my mind to think. So I have to be mindful about that. So you are not you're not tempted by the impulses, but you are deliberate. That is called tapas, right? The second tapas is food, right? Fasting, that upavasa. Then there is second thing, which is vak tapas. And what is vak tapas? Vak tapas is you think before you speak. You tell, not that you don't speak anything. You're not like Modi Baba or anything like that. But what are you going to say? And what impact it will have on others? And is it necessary or not? And is it going to solve any problem or not? So that means your speech becomes focused, direct, and meaningful, because you want to achieve things. That is called vak tapas. Then you have mental tapas. And what is mental tapas? It's very easy to kind of build our own stories, right? Somebody did not smile at you, then you say, oh, that person has become very arrogant, that person has got now recognition, so now that person doesn't care, and look at this. And it's very easy to go on and on and on and on, and what to contain that, right? And ask yourself, I'm building, there is one observation which is a right observation, that person did not smile at me. That may be the truth, but for the next level of story, that person is proud, what is the evidence, right? Then from the next story, that now that he has this, he doesn't care. So these kind of what we call thinking through association, where a small observation becomes a very huge reality for us that we have to avoid. That is called mental tapas. So this kind of these kind of tapas, not only when you retire from life and go to a secluded place, but if you can do, staying in this world, right, a certain mastery over what you consume as a food, what you speak, and how you think, and that is the greatest tapas, right? Then next, ke vruddhaha, ye dharma tattvajnaha. Who are the elderly, right? So who are they? Those are the ones who are able to interpret what is right and wrong, and they are also able to interpret what is apparent and what is the truth. So that means they are elderly. That doesn't mean that they are elderly in terms of age, but what they are wise. There is a certain thing, we make a distinction between intellect and wisdom. What is intellect? Your cognitive capacity, which will allow you to analyze things and to figure things out, to discriminate. That's wonderful. That's great. Please don't look down upon it. But what that intellect has to be used to for something useful, which will be good for you and good for everybody else. That is wisdom. And that wisdom is very much necessary. Otherwise, what intelligence means was some leader who started a war with another nation can be very intelligent, right? Because to start something like that and to conquer a country and all is very hard. So you need to plan, you need to execute, you need to bring so many people together. That's just intelligence. But what wisdom requires, it has one more dimension. Why am I doing these activities? Are they only for my hoarding or my power, or am I doing what it comes out of those actions? Does it produce overall good, which includes me and everybody else? So this is why this is what people who live like that, who are able to distinguish, those wise people are the elderly. They are the elderly because they guide the family, they guide the society, they guide humanity. So they are vruddhas, right? They are wise people. Sambhavitasya maranat adhikam kim. What is more painful than death to a respected person, right? So what is more painful than death is duryashaha bhavati. Duryashaha bhavati means that when there is ill fame, right? So if you have reached a certain height and you're respected and you're well regarded, and all of a sudden, right, what happens is some scandal comes out and you are, everybody, looks at you and people lose respect for you. That is what they call maranat api, right? That is more difficult than death itself. So I had a case, when I was working with the UN, there was one person who was on a fast track and was going to become the Under Secretary General at a very young age, very bright, very, well-known person. Everybody admired him and looked up to and respected. Now, when he was going to be promoted to Under Secretary General, then they do some check, and during those check, right, some all their personal lives and whatever, they found out that he has been misrepresenting their kids' fees, right? So they have been getting more. He has claimed more fees than what that child used to pay. So they have taken more money from the organization. And what that did to him is not only his promotion did not come through, but he was one less, so he was demoted, and and he still had to keep coming to work, right? And you could see the change in his behavior, that he would never leave his office. He will be always stuck in his room. He would, and very soon he just kind of lost interest, and there was such a fall from where he was to what he became, and that is harder than that, right? To go through that every day. You see that when people look at you, what goes on in your mind is, oh my God, what they must be thinking about me, and that is very hard. So that means for a person who is respected, and to lose that respect is the hardest thing. Now, kaha vardhate, who grows? Vinitaha, right? So what? The humble. So who grows in life? Who grows? We think the aggressive people grow. So what? Not the aggressive people go. People who are humble, they are the ones who grow in life. Why? Because the minute you appreciate everybody else's contribution to your life, and you give them the right place, and you give them the right respect, what will happen is they will contribute, right? They will feel loved, they would feel respected, and they would contribute even more. And as they contribute even more, what it will lead to? Your own success, your own, growth. And this is why we think that arrogance makes you push others, power, but it is the humble who actually really inspire people. And for those people, the people who are humble, people actually give their best. And as they give their best, what it leads to the growth of people who are humble. So that means this is what we call each one helping the other, and not looking down on anybody. So they are the ones who grow. Yathoktam dharma rakshanatham. Okay, so 47. The question is, this is the answer. Kutra andrutepi apapam. On what occasions even a lie is sinless, right? And what is the answer? The answer is yathoktam dharma rakshanartham. So what? When it is said in a larger, for the larger good, for protecting dharma and not to harm anybody. So this is one beautiful thing about Vedic dharma. We don't have absolute do's and don'ts. Dharma means there is a general rule, but there is always an exception. So it is a very simple level, right? So suppose some thief comes and puts a knife on your belly, then obviously it is a crime. There is no brainer, right? It's a crime and that person has to go to jail. But suppose a surgeon comes and he puts the knife on your belly, what? You pay him money. Why? Because he's performing a surgery to cure you. So just if you're looking at that act on a TV screen, and if you don't have any background of what is happening, then what? You may consider it, how can this person do that? But what? That person is doing it to save life and not to harm life. And this is a very basic, understanding that every value is subject to interpretation. And this is exactly what Lord Krishna was teaching Arjuna by saying that, yes, if you fought just to, out of anger, to get back to your brothers and to, take a revenge for all the wrongs that they have done, then what? It will just become a simple yuddha, right? But this is Dharma yuddha. And what is Dharma yuddha? It doesn't come from that place of anger and resentment. It has to come from the place of your role in the grand scheme of things, that you are a prince of Hastinapura, and if an unrighteous king is ruling the kingdom and you are somebody who is capable of challenging that person, it is good not only for you, but it is good for the whole kingdom. That righteous king is needed for the kingdom, for kingdom's prosperity and the happiness of the subjects, and that becomes your responsibility. You cannot be running away from that responsibility. So this is what we call, it is not fighting as such, but for what reason? What do you have in mind? That is why it is, if it is dharma rakshanartham, it is no longer considered a violence. So with this, I will end my session, because I think it is almost 1.5 hours. So thank you very much. And in the next class, which is the last class, I'll again select a few more verses and I'll finish the whole text. Thank you.
Namaste friends, this was another wonderful session from Neema Majmudar. We have many more sessions lined up for today. I'd like to announce them. Today evening at 7 p.m. India time, we have an interactive workshop for youngsters by Deepa Bhaskaran, and the topic is Vedanta Demystified for Youth. Those of you who attended her previous session know what a wonderful and inspiring speaker she is. So please don't miss this opportunity and attend the session. Thank you and goodbye.